A Republic Act is actually a law. You're right. It helps you, it helps Congress, right, and the rest of the government to carry out the principles of the Constitution, right? So 9003, I don't know if you've ever read it, if anybody has. Obviously, you like reading dry material. But let's talk about it just a little bit. We'll go to the next slide. So what is RA 9003? This is your solid waste management, right, law, if you will, okay? That was the Act of 2000. Wow, we're at 2022, something like that, right? So this was signed into law on January 26, 2001. Some of you signed into law before you were born. So, former President Gloria Arroyo, she's the one who signed it. There are 7 chapters, 66 sections, and it can only be repealed by Congress and then signed by the president. So it's not likely to happen in the near future, okay? And it is the law, which is interesting because not a lot of people follow this, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about what's behind this. Let's go to the next one. 7 chapters. These are pretty exciting chapters. First one, basic policies. I'll tell you, skip that. Okay, there's like 3 segments to it, but really dry material. It just says what the intention is. Institutional mechanisms, number 2. This is kind of interesting because this is where they create complexity, right? So we'll go into this in just a little bit, but it says, for instance, in order to have RA 9003, we need an organization to be in charge. So it lays out who's going to be in charge, the roles that they do, the things they have to do, their responsibilities, all that cool stuff. And it sets them up with a fund to make them an operational organization, and who they report to, and who's their oversight. Okay, next, comprehensive solid waste management. This is the most boring section because it's nothing but definition after definition, and most of them are very uninteresting. Incentives. This tells you a little bit about the benefits for having a waste management system, right? Why do we do this? Of course, back in the late 90s, right? The proliferation of waste was becoming a big issue in the Philippines at that time. It was getting a lot of a spotlight. So Philippines, in the late 90s, a lot of focus on this, on developing a solution. And of course, we had things like the Kyoto Report and so forth. Financing, solid waste management solution. This is really the crux of most of the problem, okay? I don't know how many of you, if you're a solution provider, that you've been out working with client, got a technical solution to implement, the client needs it, but the problem comes, you come up with a great plan, and there is no money for it. So you have to typically go looking for foreign investment, which also makes it problematic because then it's a PPP and it has all kinds of complexities to it. Did you know that there is money supposed to be available for all projects as long as they have a plan, right? That's guaranteed by the Constitution through RA 9003 and several other supporting RAs say that the government will fund these types of projects if you follow the steps. Penal provisions, and I find this pretty interesting. That means if you don't follow the law, there are penalties, right? As well there should be, okay? It goes into lengthy detail about what not following the law looks like who should pay those penalties. And it even tells you what those penalties should be, right? And who is the enforcer. Unfortunately, people who are supposed to enforce don't. Penalties are not applied. The penalties, which are supposed to go back up into financing the organization and growth in projects, never gets collected, and we have a circular problem going on. And then, of course, there's miscellaneous provisions. That's a pretty boring section, but it has a whole lot about what the government should do with those kinds of opportunities, and also the exemptions. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump to the next one.
Sorry.
Okay. So this is kind of the cool slide. Remember, I said that RA 9003 establishes an organization. Okay, so pretty clearly, I see the problem. The organization 9003 is run by the National Solid Waste Management Committee, which is clearly laid out and run under the office of the president, and the chairman is the director of the DENR, clearly laid out, along with 13 other organizations. The head of each of those organizations is a member of the committee. Okay, you know these guys have their own organizations. They're very busy. They meet once a month, right? And monthly they have to put out a report, and annually another annual report. Okay, and then there are 3 additional representatives that make up part of the organization. One representative from the NGO community, one representative from recycling, and one representative from manufacturing and packaging. That is the committee that makes up the National Solid Waste Management Organization. Okay? Does anyone see maybe a little problem here? What? Take a guess. Anybody? Anybody?
There's too many people. There's too many people.
So many. No decisions ever get made. Right? It's very difficult to get anything through. As a matter of fact, they have a hotline. I'll let you know this. In case you go to the website, there's a hotline. Nobody ever answers. It's amazing. So, okay. Also, I think it's pretty important to note that they have oversight. There are 5 congressmen and 5 senators that have oversight of this, both of them on separate sides of the aisle, to make sure that it's fair. Okay, so I think with all of this, we can see why some things move it across. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. This is the National Solid Waste Management Committee's website. Go here. It is kind of interesting because there is some great data here. Okay, so I will guide you to the upper left, a 10-year plan, right? NRA 9003 clearly states that every municipality, every LGU, every city, every barangay will have a 10-year plan that's renewed every 10 years. So we're on year 2022. Everybody should be working on their 3rd upcoming 10-year plan, right? Okay. The first year, only 32% of the required people even submitted one. By the second 10 years, we were at 60%, and we've hovered at 60% ever since. If you do go into this, it's a Power BI format. So everybody is in there, right? And they have all of these cool reports that you can, download and stuff. But for the most part, there is a large percentage of them that are being reviewed, so unapproved. So, and some of the plans that I know that are in there have been submitted and waiting for approval for more than a year. So, if you have a project and you have a plan and you submit the plan to get the funding, it sits in here for more than a year waiting for somebody to review and approve to get money, kind of loses the momentum of having the project in the first place. That's the first observation, okay? So, but good information, because you can look in there and say what areas do have a plan, who potentially has funding available, and who should I be talking to, right? Each one of those LGUs also has an organization below them that reports up to the master committee, and so they represent that municipality, that city, that barangay, that organization, and they have a structure as well. So see, it just kind of becomes a building pyramid. Anyway, LGU solid waste profile. Every municipality, every city has a profile. It's a pretty cool little template, right? Maybe I can open one up for you, but I encourage you to go take a look at it. Every template has some artifacts in there. How much waste they produce, what's their population, and then a breakdown of the waste. How much of it is going to be in biodegradables, how much of it's going to be in recyclables, right? So every city has an exact same template for the profile. You can go out, it gives you a little bit of information about who you're dealing with and maybe the areas that you can help them improve, okay? Solid waste generation. This is kind of an interesting one because they actually take and use a lot of the wax. We'll talk about that. That's wax manual. They use a lot of the wax formulas that were generated in Japan or the Philippines. But those formulas calculate how much waste you should have, how much waste you're projected to have of various types, and what that projected growth and forecast is going to be. So you can go in, it's also a Power BI format. So you can download different types of reports if you want, take a look at it, slice and dice it multiple ways. If you're into waste management, advanced recycling, something of that nature, this is a good tool to get some basic information when you're looking for locations for your service or your technology. The wax manual, as I mentioned, this was developed by a Japanese firm hired by the commission so that they can help you define how you give waste a definition, multiple definitions, and how you use math to calculate mass and how to store it, all kinds of things. It's about a 45, 48-page document. It's also very dry, but it is part of the rules, so you do have to know how to use the math in it. And it tells you a little bit about who in the LGUs or who in the barangays who are part of the team that you have to do. You can't just go do this yourself. There's an already designated team. You have to go figure out who in your client is part of the team, get them on board and bring them with you when you're doing the math, okay? There's some other information, not really as cool, I guess, if you will, right? So recipients of some of the waste management equity that has already been invested, where it went, operational sanitary landfills, stuff like that. They talk a lot about the closed illegal dump sites. I know that not all of them are really closed. So, you know, but it is good information that they're collecting. Okay, so we'll go ahead and roll on to the next page, but I encourage you to at least look at this information, especially if you have technology that you want to bring to our region. Okay. Let's see, site essentials, 10-year solid waste management plan. Absolute requirement before you're eligible for any money from the government. So that has to be in place. Challenge is how do you get it through the process faster, right? LGU waste management profile. So again, going back, looking at how the waste is broken down, how it's calculated, how it's composed in each one of the regions or the municipalities and stuff. That's good information. Information is power, so always look at it and compare with different regions. Some LGUs are further advanced than others, and you can compare some of those profiles. Solid waste generation, that one report tells you about what the forecast is. So if you're looking to deliver technologies such as advanced recycling, waste energy, automated sorting processes, that kind of stuff, that information is all about volume. So that will help you forecast what your business model is. And then lastly, the wax model. You got to know it. It's good stuff to know because you have to use that when building your plan we will submit as part of the waste management framework. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So a little bit about the strategy. This document, I spent a long time reading because it's very dry. It is 250 pages long. A lot of it says the same thing in a different way. It supports all of the legal artifacts and referendums and all of those that tie in because RA 9003 doesn't sit in a silo. It's part of a bigger group. Okay, and then the National Solid Waste Management Framework, that is defined as the key of this document. And then there's another document that defines what the framework looks like. Okay, let's go ahead and go. Let's talk a little bit about foundational alignments, right? So what was it motivated the Philippines really to create this framework, the strategy, right? Well, Disaster Recovery, Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010, or DRRM, that's what it is, DRRM, right? And that's more of an internal thing. We know that disasters have becoming more intense in the Philippines. A lot of it is just pure space, right? As the environment continues to deteriorate, as we continue to compromise our natural beauty, our lands, our resources, our ocean reefs, right? We continue to be at greater and greater risk. The Kyoto Protocol, of course, had a huge influence in us, the Basel Convention, and then Stockholm Convention. So these were the four major events that helped push and drive that fundamental strategy that we have as our waste management strategy. So let's go to the next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about what's 9003 and what's really big up. So 9003 is one document unto itself. However, there are an additional 9 Republic Acts that fall underneath that, and each one of them is equally exciting to read. Presidential decrees. There are 4 of those that support the administration of why we do that and who should be doing it. And then, of course, we have 2 executive orders, right, which means the president said, this we will do. Okay, so they're kind of important. Also, we have a couple of addendums. These are resolutions that are part of 9003. So understanding the environments right, is important if you're a solution provider, right? And for us, KeystonePartners, what we try to be is a trusted advisor, right? Partner, consultant. So knowing how this all works is important. Okay. Let's go ahead to the next one. This really is that framework I told you about. Okay, it takes a lot of time just to get down to this point and figure out what it is. But this is really what the committee drafted as, right, the guidance. So I put it down into about 10 slides for you, so no fee today. I can just share that with you. There is some things I didn't tell you, okay, so it won't be much of an itch there. But you can go and download it there, and I'll be happy to share it in these links with anybody, because it will take you a little time. Let's go ahead and roll on here. We'll wrap up a little bit. A little bit about the checklist. Is there an approved plan? Major question to ask. If you don't have an approved plan, how can I help you get one? Because without a plan, you're just going to do a lot of work, little return. Okay. Is there a sponsor with funding allocated? Maybe, maybe not. So be sure you ask the financial questions up front. Where does the money come from? Are you looking for outside funding? That's a different question. Are key stakeholders in agreement? This is critical. Know who all of those participants are. Working with an LGU, municipality, government organization already has staff people to be the core of that, but you may also have additional key stakeholders. Make sure that they're all on board and they agree, because you can get a project going, it gets all kinds of traction, and you'll have a wrong guy captain say no, and it will become your roadblock. It can hold the project up indefinitely. Make sure that you've looked at the lay of the land, who the participants are, and that you've captured everything. And then, are you aware of the supporting legal artifacts, the ones on the previous slide? So there are a lot of them. The Philippines can be a complicated place when it comes to understanding the documentation and how it works, especially if you're not from here, you're a foreigner, right? And it's important that we all understand the environment because we work in that environment. So I encourage everybody, if this is something you do, collaborate on some things. I don't know everything. I'm learning every day. Happy to learn more. Next slide, please. I think that's my end. A little bit. Okay, nope, that's it. All right. And with that, if you ever have a need to discuss advanced recycling, pyrolysis, tire reclamation, waste management, sorting, stuff like that, happy to share with you. Also, we dabble quite a bit with renewable energies and a lot of blue type projects in terms of aquacultures. So my name is Darren Heppner. Dave here is with me today. If there's anything we can answer for you or share ideas, we're happy to do so. So thank you, Jesper, for sharing the floor.
Excellent. Thank you so much.